Hello, guys. My name is Felix. I'm from Ledger. Just wanted to say, first of all, we say it whenever we do stream, in that please, we guys want to keep your assets safe. So if you guys ever ask for your 24 words, please don't give them out. We'll never ask for them. Our software will never ask for them as well. And please don't sign any transactions you don't trust. If you have tuned in before, you might see that I've actually included the chat in the right hand side just as a test this time. But if you guys have any questions, please pop them into chat. I'll try to get through them all as soon as I can. You should be able to see some of those there already. But that's about all I would want to mention first of all with regards to your 24 words and your and not signing in transactions, especially when you're using blind signing as well. So those are probably the main things that I'll start off with. And we do have a question from Conservative Hero. They mentioned, hello, I have a question about the Ledger Nano S. Should regulating bodies exceed their authority by telling Ledger to shut down and remove the Ledger Live app? What happens to our crypto? All right. And I think this is the same as if Ledger were to go out of business. At least that's what I would consider the question to be similar to, right? So what I'm going to do, if you go Ledger Academy, what if Ledger goes out of business? There is an article about this in particular, because the assets that you have that would be managed by a Ledger device would depend on this is Cora, would depend on your recovery phrase and your making sure that your recovery phrase isn't compromised. So regardless of what happens, if we go out of business, if we get told to shut down by whatever entity, whatever that might be, touch wood for that one, your assets would still be able to be managed by Ledger Live potentially, or any third-party wallet as well. Remember, Ledger Live is open source, so if we were not to maintain it, you can always maintain it with someone else could potentially maintain it as well. You can go through the code for that one. So that doesn't necessarily just apply to the Ledger Nano S, but all of the nanos as a whole. So yeah, just you can go through, you can check out this article that should have some of the details in terms of what you might require to continue to manage your assets. Cool. Hopefully that answers your question, Conservative Hero. Next one comes from Bar95, when Ledger Nano X in MetaMask Mobile. That's a really good question. I can't wait to use it. I don't have a time frame for you. You're going to hear this a lot from us. I can't really be too specific, because I wouldn't have any additional outside knowledge about when they might come in or anything like that. But yes, it is something we're looking forward to, something I want very, very soon. So it's on the way, I promise. It should be on the way, rather. I think at least all of our side is sorted out. We're just waiting on that to be integrated in particular. Dale Crockett, I did think I answered this. My understanding is Skillet is a rock band. We are not a rock band, unfortunately, but hopefully if you want to stay, you can, for sure. From Battles, you mentioned when full ergo support. I would have to say the same in terms of any specific timeframes or anything like that, unfortunately. I don't have any, I won't be able to say this is the exact date when. We do have our colleagues in the donjon and stuff going through applications and things like that, and depending on what stage either the application or whatever service that you want integrated would be, we would have to wait for that to be finished. With regards to a time frame, unfortunately I can't say. Now, let's see if we can keep going. Alan Marmaid, sorry for butchering that, is staking in Hashpack via Ledger safe? I think in terms of risk, I can definitely say for sure in terms of risk of your assets, as long as you keep your recovery phrase safe, there is no risk in terms of your assets being taken without your consent, from a scammer specifically. That's the specific thing that we're here to keep you safe from. I think there are always other types of risks, not for Hashpack in particular, but not for Hashpack in particular, but it would be just to make sure that there could be smart contract risk, there could be financial risk, the price changing and things like that. So those are other types of risks to take into account. Not that I'm a financial advisor, but in terms of staking with your Ledger device and if it's gonna be taken by someone else, yes, this is going to be safe because you keep your recovery phrase safe. All right, let's keep going. Stuart Butler. They mentioned any plans for staking ADA within Ledger Live as opposed to needing a hot wallet like Yoroi. One thing to mention actually is that you can stake with a third-party wallet like Yoroi, but you can use a feature to connect your hardware wallet, right? When you connect your hardware wallet, you don't have to import your recovery phrase, so it's not a hot wallet anymore. You're just using another wallet, another interface to interact with your assets. So you can do that. Just something to mention with regards to staking ADA. But in terms of any plans, that would be something that I wouldn't be able to comment on especially in terms of time frame. But it's definitely something we'd want to integrate. We want to integrate all these, especially the assets that have a much larger community. You guys are what we do this for. So it's definitely something that I'll put on to the developers to say, hey, this is something that you guys are after, but it is something you can do without importing a recovery phrase. And Zinfin mentions to Conservative Hero that nothing is going to stop them in terms of anything to your crypto, and that's exactly right. So hitting the nail on the head there. Nuno Pereira asks, when a ledger is compromised, is it enough to restore it as a new ledger? That is right. You would restore you wouldn't restore it with an existing recovery phrase necessarily, unless you had a separate one that wasn't compromised, but you would set it up as a new device to use the terminology that you'd see on your Ledger device itself, and then you would actually get a new recovery phrase, just to be specific and hopefully not to confuse anything there. So yes, just set it up as a new device, you'll get a new recovery phrase, and that will have no relation to the old one as well at all. And you can transfer any assets that you might have over onwards onto the addresses that are derived from the new recovery phrase. All right, so I've got this question here. My Mandarin or Chinese is terrible, but after I did reinstall my Ledger Live, updated to the latest version and cleared the cache, but you can't see your CRO, your Kronos account transaction history. If it is still ongoing, and based on what you've mentioned, it is likely going to be ongoing. I can potentially double check. There is an issue with the transaction history showing for Kronos in particular, but you can still use a block explorer to actually look through your transaction history if you need to. I already know that the devs are working on this at a high priority, so you can definitely be assured that we'd be working on it and trying to fix that as quickly as we can. But if you needed any more help in terms of seeing the history or anything like that, or at least if you needed any more information, you can definitely get a hold of us at support.ledger.com. Don't answer any direct DMs straight to you necessarily, but if you get a hold of us either via that URL or via a bunch of social media, we can try and see if we can give you any more direct specific information if you need it. All right. So Charles Y asks, how to add baby Dogecoin to Ledger Nano S Plus. I think you missed that one there, but I think if I remember correctly, baby Doge is a BEP20 token. Rather than on my head, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But with regards to any tokens, you just need to make sure that you are able to manage the tokens on that network, right? My understanding would be that baby Doge isn't an asset that you can see within Ledger Live specifically, but let's say, for example, you want to see custom tokens. You can use something like MetaMask. You can use something like Tallyho, Rabby. These are third-party wallets that interact with EVM chains. I'm not sure about Rabby off the top of my head, but in any case, EVM chains where you'll be able to see tokens and you can add custom contracts and things like that. So especially, MetaMask, you can go in, you can make sure you're connected to the Kronos network. BEP, to the BNB Smart Chain network. And then you can make sure to add the token if it's not already added. You can always find that on our website. So I'm just going to go to, this is actually what I do. Ledger support, add network, and then you'll be able to add a custom network into MetaMask, for example. And there's also one to add custom tokens as well and things like that. So you can make sure, especially with Chainlist, which is a really great tool that you can use to add networks. So just some things to consider. This does remind me, though, of course, coming to the Ledger support site, that there are some ongoing potential issues that you might be having, and you can see those there. This out of energy error on Tron should be resolved in one of the latest updates. You can see here fixed on 2.53.1. So if you're not on the latest version, you can update to the latest version, and that should resolve any issues that you're having where you have enough Tron to pay for transaction fees, but it's still reaching the limit. Next would be potentially issues that you're having with synchronization with Ethereum accounts. I've not had any issues myself on my personal computer and my work computer, but if you are having issues, definitely get a hold of us. We'll try to troubleshoot that with you if we can. All right, gotten a little off track there, but all good. We've got another question. John with a Q instead of an O. You mentioned, how do I put XDC on my Ledger Nano X? Do I need to hold ETH in order to hold XDC on the wallet? Now, there are two things that I'd be considering here, John, because if you hold XTC, I'm just going to go supported tokens in particular, but if you hold XTC as a ERC20 token, you would need Ethereum to pay for transaction fees. You don't need it to hold, but you need it to pay for transaction fees. So you can see here, if I put that, you can see XTCE, right? But now you can see here, the spoilers, XTC is supported with your Ledger Nano device in particular, but you wouldn't be able to manage that with Ledger Live. It's not supported yet. You would need to use something like MyEtherWallet. Why would it be MyEtherWallet specifically, and why? And you might think, do I need to have Ethereum, as you mentioned, to hold it? No. The reason that you might consider it is because it's an EVM. Ethereum virtual machine. They would use potentially similar address types. So, but instead of using 0x as a prefix, they would use XTC, right? So, just something to consider. I would actually be able to find, if we go back, we can actually just get the documents for connecting with my Ether wallet, and you can actually follow those steps to actually see your XDC managed by the Ledger Nano X, just so you know. So I might just quickly get that before I get on to Nuno's next question as well. XDC MEW, and you should be able to find it there. And it's in French, even though I do not speak French, but that's okay. All right, I can just change the language up on the top right, if I remember correctly. But you can see the article here goes into detail about, how to add the XDC and then connect to my Ether wallet, remembering to select the correct derivation path. All right. So the next question goes to Seek Right Tech Reviews. I'm just gonna. Oh, sorry, Nuno. I nearly missed you. So you mentioned with the creation of a new 24-word phrase, there are no more risks of the last scammer has access. The new addresses and the new recovery phrase that is generated, that your addresses are derived from, would have no relation. So yes, a scammer that has access to recovery phrase A would not be able to gain access to the addresses derived from recovery phrase B at all. That is if, considering if, someone is, looking in on you as you're setting up your Ledger device, for example, that could be a way that they might be able to see your recovery phrase. That's the only way that they might be able to gain access, potentially. Let's say there are other ways. What if if you store it onto a cloud service again, and they already have access to the cloud service, that would continue to mean that they would have access to that new recovery phrase. But specifically, the recovery phrases are not related to each other. So hopefully that does answer your question. Seek Right Tech Reviews. Okay, you mentioned I bought some crypto on one platform, then moved it to my Ledger Nano X. Can I set that crypto up sell limit orders through Ledger Live? No. Not, because I think the specific thing would be considering, what the asset is. I say no generally, but there are ways to set up limit orders, let's say with 1 inch. If I remember correctly, there are options to put limit orders in particular, as opposed to just going through market orders. It can depend on the asset, right? It can depend on which decentralized exchange you might be using as well. So there are a lot of things to consider, but in the same way that exchanges have limit orders that go straight to USD, USDT, or Euro, whatever it might be, there isn't some decentralized option to directly sell into fiat or sell into USDT, with the latter only with you see here limit only with decentralized exchanges in particular. So you have to consider which service might be right for you and what you wanted to do. But if I was going to do limit orders in particular, I'd use something like a decentralized exchange. 1 inch is a potential option that you can use. All right. Roba235 says, hey, hi. Yeah, hello. All right. Jeremy Flanagan asks, I use an Android tablet to connect to the internet. It will not recognize my Ledger device when you're connecting to TerraStation. Can I please help? I think one thing to mention is that we don't directly support Ledger Android tablets in particular, if I remember correctly, but it should still work. In particular, I don't run Ledger TerraStation. You mean, I assume. I don't personally run TerraStation on my Android phone, and I'm not 100% sure if there is functionality for that. One thing I'd ask is how, Jeremy, you're connecting your device. Would you be connecting through Bluetooth? Would you be connecting through USB, USB-C to USB-C in particular? Generally, I would recommend, if you are connecting any mobile devices, generally I like to use USB cables, even if I have my Ledger Nano X with me in particular. Other than that, you can get a hold of us. We might be able to help. Is there an error message you might be seeing other than not being able to recognize it? I don't know, again, if it's 100% supported, but of course we can try and troubleshoot that with you and see if we can get that working for you in particular. So yeah, let us know if you have if you can go into more detail, or if you want, you can go straight to us, support.ledger.com. Down on the bottom right hand side is going to be our contact us button, which will appear in a second, and you can get a hold of us there. I'll show it to you when it does come up. But I will move on to Zinfin quickly. Sologenic, I do know of that. How can you store Sologenic in an XRP address? Okay. Now, Ledger Live doesn't necessarily support XRP tokens in particular, as far as I'm aware. But you can see here, by the way, you can contact us. But if you are hoping to do so, you should be able to use a third-party wallet in particular. Right off the top of my head, I don't know any that would directly support connecting your Ledger device for XRP in particular. It's a little bit less in my wheelhouse than other cryptocurrencies. But you know, that's why we have the big help center here in particular. You can go help center XRP toolkit. I'm not sure if they can support it, but it's something you might be able to give a try with. I can double check here as well while we go through that. Toolkit, tokens, should be able to manage your XRP assets through the XRP toolkit from there. So I would suspect that would be the case. If you're having trouble with that though, give us a buzz with that support. The contact us on the bottom right as well. We should be able to help you get logged in, at least to XRP toolkit for sure, and then see how you go from there. All right. Just one thing to mention, guys, if you guys are joining us later than usual, just to mention that please don't give out your 24 words. We're here to try and secure your assets, and also don't sign any transactions that you don't trust. Just a couple of things that we always mention. We'll say to our voices are hoarse because we don't want you guys to lose your assets. But we're here to answer any of you guys' questions. If you guys want to pop those into the chat, we'll be here for another probably about 40-ish minutes answering questions of whatever you might have. And then also after that, I probably would just start to rant about security issues and things like that as well. But let's keep going. Philip Mazzola asks, what is the easiest way to verify addresses from CoinGecko and Ledger Live? So in verifying an address from CoinGecko, is there a specific type of address? Is it your own address? Is it something like that? That's the first thing that comes to mind. If you're verifying an address, so let's say I'm going to verify my Ethereum address. I just normally go to Etherscan. You can pop your address in there, and then you can just check the history quickly and make sure that it matches up with what you think it should be. That's probably the first thing that I would think. I'm just clicking on a random, this is a contract account, but I'm just clicking on some random account and then saying, hey, let's say this is something that I know should be. I'll be like, okay, this is exactly what I think it should be. It's the Bitfinex deployer. So that's kind of what I would normally do. I always check on a block explorer, if you can, multiple. If you mean because CoinGecko, I normally go to in particular for contract addresses for tokens in particular. So if you are doing it for that specific reason, I would again check on the block explorer, double check the history. Maybe you can double check it against CoinMarketCap as well. So you're using multiple sources, and just to make sure you know what exact asset that you're looking at in particular. And you can always, of course, check the actual hex of the address as well if you're really wanting to be sure about a specific token address. Hopefully that does answer what you mean, but if I missed it in particular, definitely let me know, because obviously there are other ways that you could mean by that, and yeah, I definitely want to make sure we answer your question there. But yeah, normally I just check on multiple block explorers, multiple websites, just to make sure. So you can see here, Shiba Inu is a ERC20 token, and you'll be able to see the token not only on CoinGecko here, but you'll see it on other websites as well, just to make sure they're good across the board. And then you can go here and then you can check on Etherscan and go, hey, that is exactly what I think it should be, or it is not. Boom. And you can go here, paste in the token, finishing off my coffee, and then you can see here, there's transfers from really recently and everything like that. Now, next question. All right. So this is Roba235. They mention in the Ledger Live app, there is an NFT tab for ETH and Matic. Will Solana be added to this tab? NFT tab. So just Solana NFTs in particular, I would expect it to be added. When I wouldn't be able to say, unfortunately, but it's definitely something you can manage with third-party wallets if you're not already aware, but I'm sure you might be. There'll be things like Solflare and Phantom is the only one that comes off to the top of my head, where you don't need to import your recovery phrase to manage those assets. But yes, it would be something that I would expect to be added, support for Solana NFTs. When, I wouldn't be able to say, unfortunately. GPS marketing mentions why not have support for Syscoin. I wouldn't be able to say why in particular. A lot of Syscoin doesn't come up at the top of my head, but with regards to its support, you can always if it's not a token that you would just add, it would be something that the developers of Syscoin would liaise with us to actually integrate. So they would write the wallet, write the application, and then we could potentially have that be added into Ledger Live as a application you install. It would go through a series of actual tests by our Donjon team to make sure it's all safe as well. But depending on where they might be in that stage, they might need to actually, they can liaise with us on our Discord. They can come to us, and just try to integrate that app if they need help with that in particular. Normally, if I remember correctly, the apps are written in C, just for a bit of trivia. All right, Samir George asks, in the world of microSD, we get gigabytes of data. Why Ledger devices have such limited kilobyte memory? I think it's important to note that there is no requirement for the data. So we're not storing like huge nodes of data, all right? We're not storing like the whole blockchain data on the Ledger device. Your assets aren't stored on there either. So the asset itself, so the device itself, I'm just going to bring so the Ledger device itself only needs to hold your recovery phrase, and that's it. Your applications as well, because it needs to understand how to interact with the blockchains that you're interacting with, right? The limited space isn't necessarily a matter of just chucking on a bunch of gigabytes of data. Like what are we going to do with that space? I think I'm not the dev that's going to necessarily say this is exactly why, but my understanding would be there's no reason to, because you only need the applications. The applications are only a couple 100 kilobytes, let's say. And then you need a couple of those for Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever you might need. And then you can manage all the assets from there in particular. Again, I kind of understand, it might be nice to have like a gigabyte of to install all the applications. But I don't think that would be good for my setup. And I imagine there would be a similar reason why they would have considered using smaller. I would imagine especially because of security. That's going to be the basis for what we make a lot of our decisions here at Ledger is making sure everything's as humanly as secure as possible. The device itself, to make sure that it can't be hacked. I think that would be the primary reason, but I can't be. But I don't want to put words into the dev's mouths. But that would be my best interpretation. All right, Andreas Ebert asks, hello, is it possible to manage Lightning networks with a Ledger device? It is not at this stage, unfortunately. I am not sure if it is something that is as feasible as just integrating that if you're using a soft wallet, unfortunately. So that is not something that I understand is possible with a Ledger device. Warren Roll, will Lunar Classic be added to Ledger? If you mean Ledger Live, I would not expect that to be the case, frankly. But I would never know. You can still manage your Lunar Classic with your Ledger device with third-party wallets. If I remember correctly, it's Rebel Station, Ledger Rebel Station, that you can manage Lunar Classic with in particular. Yeah, that's the one. So if you do want to manage your assets with a third-party wallet, remember you don't have to import your recovery phrase, so it doesn't mean that it's a hot wallet or anything like that. All right. Now, John Doe, they mention, I ordered Ledger Sacks 3 days ago. When is the expected delivery? One thing to mention is that the delivery of the devices haven't gone out yet. It was mentioned in the on the product page. They are sold out now, by the way. So thanks everyone for the support with the Ledger Stacks. My current memory serves me correctly, it is May that we're expecting at the latest for a ship out of the devices in particular. So just something to keep it in mind. But yes, that is the expected delivery date at this stage. Victor Georgiev mentions, hi, I've got a question about the CL card. Does it have any fees when you use it for instant crypto to fiat conversion transactions? When you are using the CL card, they do have potential fees. Because it's managed by banks, I don't have them off the top of my head, but you can check them in the T's and C's if I remember correctly. There are some fees here and there with regards to that, and even a Ledger FAQ about that as well. Honestly, when I do answer customers, this is actually what I do. I just Google everything. I work at the company and I do that as well. I think it's a great. Our help center has a lot of information. I can't keep it all off the top of my head. So if I remember correctly, there is a what fees do you charge, and you can see terms of use here, and you can see the instant to crypto, the crypto to fiat conversion transactions. So like you're paying for something in a shop, or I imagine that would be listed here in particular. If I type fees, they're all there. So you can check that as well. 1% you can see for Bitcoin. All right. So let's power on through. Zinfin mentions, awesome, thanks for the info. No, thank you for the question. Always love questions. If you have any more, if any of you guys have any more questions, please pop them into chat. I'll try to answer them as best I can. I do understand there's a lot of questions about when certain things are going to be supported, and I wish I could be more specific in terms of timeframes a lot of the time. But I don't want to give any of you guys any false expectations. So all I can say with all of the when questions is that most of the time our guys are working on it, and we want it to be out as soon as possible. We just want it to be safe in particular. All right. All right, boom, boom, boom. Conservative hero. I did answer your question above conservative hero, but I will answer it again because it does bear mentioning that no matter what, if Ledger goes out of business, even for example, nothing happens to your crypto because your crypto is on the blockchain. It isn't stored on your device. It isn't stored by us. We're not a bank. We're not an exchange, right? So as long as you have your recovery phrase, you can always manage your assets You can manage your assets not even with Ledger Live, but you can manage it with MetaMask. You can manage it with, I've been talking about Rebel Station, Yoroi, things like that, right? You can manage it with any other wallet. And if Ledger were to go out of business or they tell us to shut down for whatever reason, then you would want to, if they tell us to shut down, then there would be another entity potentially that might want to continue to manage Ledger Live. So that would be another way that you can manage your assets, even if we're not around to keep up the infrastructure on our end or to continue to update Ledger Live in particular. So I wouldn't worry about that. I did go to a article about that. What if Ledger goes out of business? You can see, oops, I'll just click on it instead. And it goes into, it's not exactly what you're mentioning here, but it does go into why it wouldn't matter, right? Because the recovery phrase is a thing that derives your private keys, and those private keys are what allows you to manage your assets. It's nothing, we don't know it, we can't get it. So even if we were to shut down, nothing is going to happen to your crypto because you still hold your private keys. So hopefully that does answer your question. Okay. Boom, Zinfin, awesome, thanks for the info. I think I skipped a couple there. All right, hi, are there any, AD23 mentions, hi, are there any issues right now with Ledger for BTC and LTC synchronization? I have 2 accounts which have a lot of transactions, but they can't seem to sync with a new device. Error request aborted is the error message you get. 8023, think the first thing that I'd think about with that in particular is if you are mining from those accounts by any chance. Just a thought, if you are, it does, the devices that we have aren't necessarily built very well for managing addresses that have a huge number of UTXOs. So normally what we do recommend rather is that you consolidate those UTXOs before you send them to a Ledger managed address, if that's the case. However, I have seen there could be some issues potentially that might be happening across a number of people. If that's the case, you can definitely get a hold of us. We can try to get, normally it's logs from you, try to understand the problem further, try to isolate the issue, and we can troubleshoot from there. If you're not mining, for example, from that address, get a hold of us here, support.ledger.com. It'll appear on the bottom right-hand side, and you can get a hold of us here that way if you are still experiencing issues in that way. I'm not directly aware of any huge outages at the moment, but it is something to consider, to get a hold of us if that's the case. Alan, Mermaid, I know I missed that. Will Constellation be supported in Ledger soon? Again, can't go into exact timelines or anything. I'm not directly aware of that one in particular. Let me just check if I have any specific time frame or if they're on the roadmap or what that might be while I'm doing that. Robo235 mentions thank you. No, thank you for the question again. No worries at all. So Alan, I'll look through that for you now. We'll go to the next question though. RH mentions, hi, is it safe to buy new ERC coins on MetaMask linked to a Ledger Ethereum address used exclusively for MetaMask? Please link MetaMask to Ledger Live Mobile. Okay. So what I would consider there is that ERC20 tokens, however you buy them, whether it's through a decentralized exchange or whatever it might be, it would be fine to store them on a Ledger managed account, right? No worries at all. Especially if it has a relatively good, reputation. It's not like some scam coin or anything like that. That would be the first thing to consider, whether or not the token is not a scam, quote unquote. But the next thing would be, I not sure if I fully understand, but you're used exclusively for MetaMask, right? If you mean that you've connected your Ledger device using the Connect Hardware Wallet feature, and you've got an address that you don't use in Ledger Live, and you only use in MetaMask, then there's no reason why those two would be linked necessarily or anything like that. Because they're two different addresses, potentially, there might even be a derivation path that only MetaMask can see that we don't look at in particular. That could be the case too, right? Is it safe to buy those coins? As long as those coins are safe, there's no reason why those coins in particular would affect your other accounts. What could happen though is if they are scam coins, they could run some kind of arbitrary code if you're calling the transfer function, the transfer from, or whatever it might be, and it could affect the other tokens at that address. So that in particular is something to consider. Whether or not that is the case for a specific token, I wouldn't be able to tell you, but those are the things that I consider about buying tokens, ERC20 tokens in particular, especially if they're very, very low market cap. But I wouldn't be a financial advisor. I wouldn't say 100% exactly. Karen SA mentions, I don't quite understand. In one breath, Ledger says you can replace your seed phrase, and in another breath, it gives instructions on how to. So if you change your seed phrase, does it change your private key? It does, exactly right. The reason that you'd want to replace your recovery phrase, seed phrase, mnemonic phrase, all words for the same thing, would be that if your recovery phrase would be compromised, for example. So let's say someone gets a hold of your recovery phrase. You couldn't be sure that someone is, not able to manage your assets, right? So you want to get a new recovery phrase. Why? So that you can be sure that you're the only one that has access to the private keys that are derived from the recovery phrase. And in that way, you're the only one that can manage those assets. So just hopefully that's able to further answer your question, because yes, you can replace your recovery phrase. That is exactly correct. And we do give instructions on how to. So reset, restore, or set up as a new device is probably more specific in this case, because you're actually getting a new recovery phrase. So you're setting up as a new device. So when you change your seed phrase, your mnemonic phrase, you get a new private key, and therefore you get a new access to a new address, totally different, has no relation to the old one, and then you continue to transfer funds onto there. So hopefully that answers the question. Andreas Ebert mentions, thank you for the answers, just interested, no worries at all, always happy to answer all the questions. If you have more, we're always here. All right, Warren Roll mentions, in the near future, will we be able to link our bank accounts to Ledger Live for cash out options? Now, this is a question that I get a lot. It isn't something that I'd expect to have in the near future, although if I'm honest, in my opinion, on-ramps and off-ramps are the biggest sticking point for the whole industry as a whole, right? It isn't something that I expect very soon. Now, the reason for that is that cryptocurrency, the accounts that cryptocurrencies use don't have a lot in common with normal bank accounts, right? Bank accounts have more of a centralized structure to them. You might be sending through SWIFT in the US, if I remember correctly. Oh no, internationally. SEPA in Europe and things like that. And it's just not something that we use in cryptocurrency. We use, the cryptocurrency transactions are more signed on the Ledger device or on your hot wallet, and then they're broadcast onto a gossiping network for something like Ethereum or Bitcoin or something like that, right? That's not to say that there aren't cash out options. What I might do is I have just, you can go to buy and sell here, and you can actually go and sell your assets. In particular, just Bitcoin at this stage. You can see I don't have that much. But that also does depend on region as well, if Coinify is available for your area. If it's not,
You might have to use maybe a centralized exchange to try and get those as an off-ramp in particular. I personally use different ways. There is actually, if I go back in the Discover section, you can actually find Bit Refill, which is a real big favorite of mine. And the reason I mention Bit Refill as it loads up here is because you can actually pay for things. Here we go. I was actually living in Australia completely off Bit Refill. I was paying for groceries, I was paying for clothes, I was doing everything just with gift cards. It's great. It's a great way to do it for me personally, at the time for me personally. So yeah. Just something to consider. It wouldn't necessarily be something that I'd say would be coming necessarily very soon, but I'd love to see it. All right. MG asks, hello Style, don't have answer about Neo wallet about my DBC. Yes, I think I remember MG, you mentioning that in particular. Can you just pop that case number again in the comments? I would be under the impression my colleague would have answered it, but we obviously want to give you a hand with that one as well. I think, like we mentioned, the Neo documentation is probably quite outdated at this stage, but we want to try and give you a hand as best we can. So drop that in the comments. We'll try to go from there. John Kuvadakis, hopefully I didn't butcher that too much, asks one question. The 24 words are the private key. And I see Dreamer did answer private key equals seed phrase equals 24 word recovery phrase equals recovery phrase. All the same thing for those asking. I actually have to disagree there. They are slightly different, but I think for most beginners, it is basically the same thing, right? The 24 words are essentially your master key, what I normally try to call it. And they actually derive all the specific private keys for potentially each network based on a derivation path. Just to be really technical about it, right? I mean, in essence, they are basically the same thing. I also kind of half agree as well. So, if I don't want to be too pedantic, I would agree 100%. But essentially, without going into too much detail, you can use them interchangeably in most circumstances. Not all, but most. But Dreamer9913, you did have a question, and you say, hello, how durable is the ledger pod? What kind of abuse can it take? Can it keep the ledger safe in case of fire or if it is submerged in water? You did mention the simplified version, the 256 private keys. Yes, exactly. With regards to the ledger pod, I am not under the impression that they are rated for waterproofness, but anecdotally, so one of my colleagues does own the ledger pod, and he has put it underwater and it has been fine. That's not to say that you should store it in a pool necessarily. But for them, it has worked out fine to have put it in water. I can't say that I'd be particularly excited to store my Ledger Nano devices in water in a Ledger pod. I would much prefer something like the crypto tag to store the recovery phrase and then go from there if I had to put it in some kind of water in particular or something like that. All right. So hopefully that better answers your question. In terms of abuse, I don't think they've been specifically rated for pressure, for lava or that kind of thing in particular. But they're just there to kind of keep it more secure than it would just be when I throw it around. I've definitely broken a couple just by being a little too careless. Ian Howes mentioned, is there a reason why my question wasn't answered? I didn't see your question, Ian. If you want to pop that in the chat, I'll definitely try to answer it. It's definitely not trying to miss it or anything like that. I don't remember seeing a question with regards to that, but yeah, definitely we can get that answered for you. Sonny Henderson asks, I've been waiting for a debit card in the USA. One thing to check would be to contact the bank's team in particular. I think they're, because they would be the ones that would be managing to send those out, everything like that. Ledger support, CL card, there's normally the FAQ, and they have that email in particular where you can try and get a hold of them, see if you can liaise with them about that. That's support at cl-cards, at cl-cards.com. They should be able to help you out with that one. All right. How would I know if a coin is a scam coin? This is always the eternal question, isn't it? I think that's probably a little more outside of what we can help you with. For me personally, it's always just about checking the contract. So I always check that the contract has been verified. I look through the contract details, smart contract. You can always go into their Discord. You can check their roadmap, white paper, all that kind of stuff can give you hints if something is a scam coin. But I don't think there's any specific definition in particular. But those are my personal steps if I'm in terms of due diligence. If I am wanting to buy something that might be of a lower market cap, I'll just be like, okay, what can I check? I want to check the smart contract. I want to know that these guys are doing what I hope that they're doing. And you know, when I buy a coin, you want to make sure you're supporting a specific use case, for example. That's normally what I think about in particular. But sorry, I couldn't be more specific there. Dreamer. Dreamer, exactly. I couldn't seem to find that question in particular, but hopefully I want to be able to answer that one. So if you pop that again, we'll try to answer that for you. Thanks, Dreamer, for helping us out there. Hugo Moreno, you did ask a question there, but I do not speak Spanish. I don't want to offend anyone, but I don't speak any other languages very well. Unfortunately, if you want to jot that down in English, I definitely will try to answer that for you as well. RH mentions thank you. No, thank you. But you also ask, is it cheaper to buy crypto from Ledger or an exchange? It definitely depends on what asset you're buying. Honestly, I would be inclined to advise you to, just in general, to always just shop around for what you think is best. If it's supported, how you're gonna buy it, what network you want to get it on, if it's supported and that kind of thing. There's so many things to consider, not just in terms of price, and then there's slippage and fees and everything like that. So I normally do both. I've definitely bought with the options in Ledger Live, of course. You've got the buy and sell tab. You can buy with Coinify. You can see I bought from them before, and you can use whatever that you'd want. Let's say Aussie dollars with I don't know why I did a 999, but with whatever assets that you might want to use, and you can go from there depending on what asset you wanted to buy. So totally up to you. I would shop around. As I said, that's normally the best way to find out what best prices you're going to be able to get. Okay. All right. Thanks, MG, for the case. I'll pop that in there now, and then we'll be able to get a hold of that for you. Sorry about that, mate. I'm not sure why that wouldn't have been picked up, but we'll be able to do that for you now. Easy stuff. All right. John Cena mentions your balance is not updating. I'm going to skip over your RH, but I'm going to come back to you. What should I do? And now everything is not synchronizing with the mobile app. So first thing to check always would be your application version. What version of Ledger Live might you be using? If you're not using the latest version, just to make sure you're doing so. I don't, you can always check, for example, status.ledger.com. I think that's the one. If there are any ongoing outages, there are none as far as I can see and am aware of. But of course, if something's happening, we always want to hear about it ASAP. Do you know which specific assets aren't synchronizing? Do you know if it's only those assets, if there's anything else? Is it giving any error messages on the synchronizing button in particular? So you can see here on the top right, if I go back to accounts, you'll be see on the top right here, synchronizing. Here, is it only happening for these two, for example? Is it Tron in particular? You can see here that's an actual message that I'll have to get back to right after I finish this live stream and have a chat with my colleagues about that. But that kind of thing, what is it specifically that you might not be able to see? And then we will definitely try to give you a hand with that one in particular. All right. Definitely let me know, because we want to fix everything as quickly as we can. All right, so next thing, Karen can use the old account by resetting the device and using the old seed phrase. Oh yes, sorry Karen, I totally missed that. If you have locked pools and you have changed your seed phrase, can you still use the old address to unlock your pools, or will you need a new address to unlock them as well? And you know, RH mentions you can use the old accounts, resetting the device using the old seed phrase. That is right. That's exactly right. I think one thing to mention there, just to keep in mind about that, Karen, would be that you can have issues if you need to pay for transaction fees. So just keep that in mind. You don't want, if you have had old recovery phrase compromised, that if you put more ETH in there, for example, they might take that immediately. But with regards to that, I know you asked, are there instructions for changing your seed phrase back? You would restore from an existing recovery phrase, and ledger support. Again, I can never keep all these bookmarks off the top of my head. And you can see here, you can restore. So you just reset the device. You can enter your PIN 3 times incorrectly, specifically. So make sure you have your current recovery phrase stored away, secure. And you can then get your old recovery phrase and restore from that as well. And you can see all the steps here. Like I mentioned, you can either go to support.ledger.com and search for that, or you can use Google to search for that as well, Karen. So hopefully you'll be able to do that, and then you can unlock those pools if you need to going forward from there. Boom. So hopefully you'll be able to do that. Definitely let us know if you continue to have trouble with that one as well. All right. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone in particular. John Cena, you mentioned it's Binance Smart Chain in particular that's not working. It's definitely, I mean, it seems like it's working for me at this stage in particular, but of course it doesn't mean that it might not be 100% working for you. Being that you've already cleared the cache, do you know what, like I mentioned, what version you're using? Would you be operating from your home network, a work network in particular? Would you be operating from with a VPN? Those are the first things that come to mind if something's not synchronizing. Normally it's with regards to making sure that you can connect to the infrastructure to make sure we can get the the balance amounts, recent transactions and that kind of thing in particular, to make sure those are all updated. So if they're not able to connect, for example, that's the kind of thing that I would be thinking of as a potential troubleshooting step to make sure we can isolate that issue. Hugo Moreno, I do not speak that language, but I do see XDC, MetaMask and Ledger. So if I go by the seat of my pants, if you're trying to manage XDC via MetaMask, you definitely can do so. You would use use the Connect Hardware Wallet feature to first add your account, the corresponding account. Remember that XDC uses the XDC prefix and not 0x, so you just got to find the specific address that matches without those prefixes, accounting for that. Make sure you add the network in particular, and then once you've done that, you should be able to see your XDC going forward. You can see here there's a GIF here that might be able to give you a little more detail. You can see Synfin comes up, and you should be able to see it like that. So I hope, Hugo, that was your question, but I don't know necessarily if that was the case or not. Hopefully you can definitely get a hold of that. What I'll do, you can always, if it is Spanish, then maybe you should be able to see that you can connect from there. Hopefully that does help. You can find that article there. I'll just keep that up for a second. Well, Sonia, I do see your question here. I've got to finish up very soon, so we'll take this as the last question. Just to see your card details, it did not state when debit cards. It did not say state when debit cards are coming to USA. Thank you for your response. Yes, I wouldn't necessarily know when specific cards are coming at all, unfortunately. But you can definitely get a hold of the CL Cards team to really confirm when that might be the case. So again, guys, do have to wrap up really soon. MG, I do see your comment there, but I'll try to get back to you ASAP right after this. I've got your ticket number here and I'll reply to you ASAP, but we'll have a chat going forward from there. Please, guys, don't give out your 24 words. Don't sign any transactions that you don't trust. Please, guys, stay safe in the markets out there. And yeah, we'll be back. There's going to be AMAs and Twitter lives all throughout this week as well going forward, of course, as we usually do. Keep track of us on Twitter, YouTube, everywhere. And yeah, stay safe and have fun.